So here we have data as of April 10th, the week end date in which the death occurred, how many attributed to COVID-19, deaths from all causes, percentage of expected deaths. Let's jump up here and take a look at what that means. Provisional data on this page include weekly provisional count of deaths due to COVID-19, deaths from all causes, percent of expected deaths, number of deaths received over the number of deaths expected based on data from previous years. So they're doing year-over-year comparison. Pneumonia deaths, excluding pneumonia deaths involving influenza, pneumonia deaths and influenza deaths involving COVID-19. And then they've got it by weekend date and some other data demographics, which I'm going to bypass for this video. So here's our chart. Expected deaths. This is the percentage of deaths that they are expecting based on prior year numbers. And these are some of the numbers that we're going to take a look at in the hardest hit regions of the United States. These are age demographics. I'm going to bypass that for right now if you want to take a look at it. Gender demographics. So here's the data for the states. And if we reorganize this table by COVID-19 deaths, New York City is, as far as I know, the only city that is explicitly being listed in this data. And then you have New York, New Jersey, Michigan, and so on down the list. So what I did is, once again, took and put this data into a spreadsheet to work with it a little bit. So 4,984 deaths in total, 1956 in New York. And come over to this spreadsheet. And here is that same data. So expected deaths, again, based upon last year's and or prior year's numbers, only 89% of the expected deaths have been reported to the CDC. New York, which is the hardest hit region of the country according to the reports, has only reported a 33% increase in deaths, 1/3, over previous years. New York State, a 3% increase, New Jersey a 3% increase, and then the other states that I have in this table are all under 100%. And I picked the top 6 or so to California, and then picked Louisiana, because Louisiana's been hitting the news. Wisconsin, I spent some time in Wisconsin, and I currently live in Minnesota. So in here, I have a column of the percentage of COVID-19 deaths over all deaths. So according to these stats, all the deaths that have been reported, less than 1% of the deaths are attributed to COVID-19. Less than 1% of the deaths are attributed to COVID-19 when they are reporting all known and presumed deaths by COVID-19. So this is 1%, and it may be an overinflated number if they actually did the tests. So remember, the majority of the people who test positive for COVID-19 aren't even showing any symptoms. And there's questions if those tests are even being counted in the number of cases. According to these statistics, 13% of the COVID-19 deaths in New York, of the deaths in New York right now, city, are COVID-19. 3.4% in the state, and then going down the list. So right now we have the whole country locked down. Most of the world is locked down based upon 1% death rate of a contagion that is supposedly spreading around And while all this is happening, our government has not done enough to make sure that people don't lose their homes and their businesses. The stimulus bill that has passed, I'm sorry, it's not going to go very far. This might be why you see people outside gathering, and this might be why you see people protesting. Saw protests in Ohio, business owners protesting in Ohio. This pandemic does not seem as threatening as it's being made out to me in the news. Again, I'll share the links in another document somewhere. But I've seen lots of stuff where the news is being misleading to actually outright lying about what's going on. And so these are some statistics that I'd like you to take a look at and put in perspective and ask yourself, just how serious is this? Is this being used once again to implement more control, take away more of our liberties and freedoms, and we're being tricked and deceived into thinking that we are helping everyone, helping the general welfare by staying at home? And I ask that question because a lot of small businesses seem to comply with these mandates by the governors and the federal and state governments, and yet go out and the corporations are open. And if this contagion is spreading so rapidly and it is so deadly, why aren't we getting sick in the grocery stores? Think about it. If there is that many people walking around asymptomatic, carrying the coronavirus, and we are going to the grocery stores and shopping, and I haven't seen any data on how long this virus can live outside the body. How long can it live on a dry surface? And I've seen the data, I've seen the tests for other coronaviruses, such as the one that caused the SARS outbreak 12 or 15 years ago or whatever it was. We're not being educated on the actual characteristics of this virus. How long does it live outside the body? What is the risk of touching a surface after it has been touched by someone else who has the virus? I think all of it's being driven by fear. I'm not saying there's not a virus. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's not a virus. I think the conditions are being exaggerated to keep us in fear. So thanks for listening. Be safe. Keep your wits about you. And listen carefully at what's happening behind what you're being told. Stay safe. Live in peace and love. Don't fear your neighbor.